Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Politicine Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Ray and Trex, and today we're joined with Trex Jones. Trex Jones, how are you?
Doing good. How are you?
Good, good. And today we're going to talk about Trump administration, what has been happening, what is happening, and how is the golden age of America? Is it really golden, or is it gilded? We'll see. Firstly, let's talk about the Trump administration, the Trump movement. Firstly, let's go over some of the factions of it. Firstly, we got the MAGA Bros. What can you tell me about these MAGA Bros?
Well, the first battle we have in the Trump administration is between MAGA Bros and Tech Bros.
That is true.
And the first kind of battle that we get into on the Trump presidency is H-1B visas, which are for specialized employees from other countries.
Or so they say.
Yeah, as the MAGA Bros will say, it's kind of a scam. And Tech Bros will argue that it's needed because it's helpful for them to grow their economy and grow their company and get people to come here that usually we can't get Americans to do these jobs because they don't have the right education or they're not specialized enough. And, we're seeing that both sides are arguing, or one side's arguing that's not true. Other sides, like Vivek Ramaswamy on the Tech Bros sides, to summarize his point, he said American IQ here, go on with it.
The reason top tech companies often hire foreign-born and first-generation engineers over Native Americans, not Native Americans, Native Americans, isn't because of an innate American IQ deficit, a lazy and wrong explanation. It comes down to the C word, culture. Tough questions demand tough answers. And if we're serious about fixing the problem, we have to confront the truth.
So this is the side of Vivek Ramaswamy, and what he's trying to lay down the foundation for is these H-1B visas are needed because Americans are lazy. We don't have enough IQ.
Right. We're going out to party instead of staying home and studying.
Yeah.
Actually, there was a crazy thing I saw. I read from him. And do you know the movie Whiplash? Have you watched the movie Whiplash?
I watched it a long time,
but
barely.
The movie Whiplash, basically, it's about this guy who plays the drums, and he's put in this abusive relationship, like teacher-student relationship with this jazz conductor.
Yeah.
And he basically goes through hell and high water just to please the guy and achieve excellency. Gets into a car accident, runs to the stage all bloodied up just to perform, puts everything away, destroys everything just to be good at playing the drums. And basically what Vivek said was, oh yeah, a movie like Whiplash, that's what we should be aspiring to. That's what we should have our kids be doing. That's disgusting, firstly. And if you want to say that's a cultural thing, that's just wrong. That's just abuse. And I think Vivek Ramaswamy is a complete fool for saying these things. He wants to say that, he's proud of America, America first, but then says, oh no, we can just, basically replace many qualified Americans because of the cultural issue. And there's a lot of people outside the country who are probably better, which I believe is completely unfounded. Most Americans think it's unfounded. Polling found that about 60% of Americans think that there's an adequate amount of people in the U.S. who can do these high-paying, well, we'll talk about the high-paying part, but high education necessity jobs, which brings to another point of whether or not these H-1B visas are actually being abused. According to some people, Steve Bannon and others, these visas, beyond the fact of not always being used for actually highly educated, I don't know what the right term is, highly educated jobs.
I think it's more what you see from the MAGA Bros is that, and even Bernie Sanders echoes this, is that the view is that they're used to undercut American jobs that could be high paying, that are specialized, but the companies use this H-1B visa to get people from other countries and undercut them in specialized industries.
And,
so, yeah.
And it's important to realize that with these workers who are coming from abroad, these H-1B visa workers, they're beholden to these companies basically for their livelihood while they're in the U.S. So they'll take whatever pay that they get. If they get, abused, if they get undercut themselves, if they get, basically tossed around, they just got to deal with it because the alternative is getting basically deported back to the country or having to leave.
Yeah.
They're basically trapped. And You know, you want people talk about techno feudalism. People talk about which way capitalism's going. This is some form of literal indentured servitude, in my opinion. If you're not beholden to these companies, you just get tossed aside. You get basically kicked out. You have to keep up with these companies because of H-1B visas, and this is what these tech bros love. They want this because they want the cheapest labor. They want to be able to have these guys work 80 hours a week, which, by the way, I don't believe is indicative of hard work. It's indicative of an abusive work culture.
Yeah. But going back to this, let's look at Trump's views over time. Because in 2016, Trump released a statement while he was running for president: I will end forever the use of H-1B visas as a cheap labor program and institute absolute regulation to a requirement to hire American workers first for every visa and immigration program. No exception.
No exceptions.
And then we get to 2020. No one can compete with American workers when they're giving a fair and level playing field, which has not happened for decades.
Seems like another win for the MAGA bros.
Double down, double down. And in 2024, we see um, I've always liked the visas. I've always been in favor of the visas. That's why we have them. This is him, of course, referring to H-1B visas. And then he also talks about how he has many H-1B visas on my properties. I've been a believer in H-1B. I've used them many times. It's a great program.
Sure, they're some of his greatest workers.
They're some of his greatest workers, as he put it down. So it's interesting to see that I guess kind of this is one of the ways to highlight the Trump change, really, from 2016 to 2024, of a more not isolationist, but what's the better word for it?
I mean, I wouldn't say isolationist. I just think he's opened himself up to be more amenable towards the tech bros who want to exploit foreign workers, basically screw over the home American. I genuinely believe that this goes everything in the face of the America First movement, the MAGA movement. It's a massive spit in the face. People are not economic units. You don't just trade them around and move them. People are part of countries with, you know, distinct identities and cultures and needs. And when you're a leader of a country, you got to put your own people's needs first. To have the H-1B visa program be so abused and be in such a state where a tech company can use the H-1B visas to get around hiring Americans and instead hire some foreign-born nationals with precarious education levels in order to basically exploit them for extra hours for less pay, directly hurts an American who could be working that job and being more fairly compensated. And I think it's a total disgrace that this is such a debate. And I'm not saying, completely roll it back, make it zero, but the fact that Trump has basically bent over backwards for the tech bros on this matter, I think is completely abhorrent.
Yeah. And for example, some people say the solution for solving this is making minimum requirements for those visas to be paid more. It kind of saying, like, if you really can't find a American born citizen to do those jobs, you can get your H-1B visas, but you have to pay them right, because coming in and having them be paid way less is wrong.
But it even goes into this question of, like, what is paying them right? Because there are instances where these companies would actually put out a job offering at a wage that most people will not take because it's not reciprocal to the amount of work that has to be done. And then the companies go, oh, well, we couldn't find any foreign-born Americans. We
Native born.
Sorry, we can't find any native-born Americans. We got to go foreign. We got to go abroad and find them. And this is just not true. You're telling me the numerous Americans coming out of college every year with these high-paying degrees, these computer science degrees, who everyone's joking about being going to be homeless in a couple of years. They're not. They're all getting jobs and they're just not picking your jobs. It's a complete utter falsehood. That's not true. I don't believe that.
Yeah, and I mean it's a really interesting battle, because there is times where we need H-1B visa or H-1B visas.
Of course.
And then there's times where you're like, wait, I thought we had all these CS majors. Then they're being hired. Oh, because they're being placed with people from other countries from H1 from H-1B visas. So it's gonna be an interesting battle to see play out. I think that the tech bros are gonna have it. I think H-1B visas are great because they do help. I mean, I have family friends that used to work in companies like Microsoft for headhunting, and they, during like the big internet boom, they would be like hiring people from all over the place and getting coders and getting them to come here, paying them really nice wages. At that time, though, really nice wage, or really really great salary for a tech bro is about $50,000 to $60,000 starting. That has changed a little bit when you get to 2020s, and then it's gone down.
6 figures or no job.
No job. But now let's talk about the Libertarian
The
bros.
Libertarian bros, yes.
Yes, and their one victory this year. They got a
Their perennial one victory per election cycle when both candidates try to pander to them slightly to get their votes, which is basically commuting the sentence of Ross Ulbricht, who, if you guys know, also called Dread Pirate Roberts or Dread Pirate Scott, one of the two, founded the Silk Road. And there's a whole debate over whether or not he really called the hit. Well, there's a whole story behind him, which, yeah, okay, yeah, I guess so. Okay, so the Silk Road was basically one of the internet's first and biggest online drug trafficking sites. You could buy anything on there, really, like anything. This was back during the days of the early internet when things were a lot more deregulated. The internet was still coming about. He kind of jumped on this market early. He created a company that was worth like multi-millions. It was an entire black market industry right on your computer. You could just go right onto, and basically what they got him for, besides drug trafficking and peddling, was basically he tried to order a hit on an individual on the site who reportedly was scamming individuals. However, this is a whole case where there's a vicious debate over whether or not it was actually him who did it or perhaps somebody else who had access to his account. He might not have been the only one who had access to the account. There's also debates over whether or not it could have been considered something of an entrapment case, if the case was even real, or if it was all a fabrication by certain individuals. That being said, there's a big debate over whether or not Ross Ulbricht was fairly or unfairly imprisoned, especially for the degree of his sentencing, which I believe was like life.
yeah, because he was facilitating drug trade, hitmen, and also, I mean, really, it was a black market, so really anything, and
Anything goes.
and Donald Trump said he will pardon this person at a libertarian, um,
At a convention.
yeah,
Libertarian
convention.
National Convention.
And he made his deal with the Libertarian Party, and that helped them get their vote, and help also get them to come out and get their one victory per
Right, and now
one election.
Now it's time to go back to big government. I mean, the less spending part, I guess, is a libertarian W, but the big government part, I don't think is going anywhere, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's just moving around.
But going back to big government, I think we need more room for this big government.
Big country, baby. Manifest destiny.
So yeah, we're going to talk about the Panama Canal, and I really did not know much about the Panama Canal. I don't know. I know it has a lot of trade significance. I know that 72% of the vessels roughly 72% of the vessels passing through the fifth 1 mile waterway are going towards the U.S. And like a lot of it is, I mean, they generate a lot of our routes. They help save a lot of the time. They account for 5% of all global maritime trade.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't really know what was happening down there and why Trump kind of wanted to be down there.
Yeah, so I think for some historical context, basically, the United States builds the Panama Canal with mainly U.S. workers. 30 to 40, I think tens of thousands died in the process. This was under the time of Theodore Roosevelt. So pretty far back, around turn of the 20th century. And we basically create it and we occupy and run it for first 100 years plus. And it wasn't until around 1977, well, actually, less than 100 years. Now, time really flies.
Yeah.
Around the 1970s, during the Carter administration, there was a strongman in charge of Panama named Torrijos. And he was basically arguing that if the U.S. did not cede control of the Panama Canal to Panama, they would have guerrilla operations along the Panama and disrupt the shipping industry that goes through there, basically make it unsafe and untenable to use. That being said, this was during a wave of nationalistic fervor of Panama. There was disagreements over the fact that it's Panama. Why is there a U.S. flag flying over the Panama Canal? So what ended up happening was that in 1977, Torrijos and Carter signed a treaty over the Panama Canal, which basically would relinquish control, U.S. control of the canal to Panama, with a stipulation that the canal would remain neutral. Trump has been cited in video during interviews, basically saying that he thought Carter was a good leader, but one of the biggest mistakes he made, that one of the biggest mistakes that he made, one of the biggest mistakes in U.S. to black history, he believes, was the U.S. ceding the Panama Canal back towards the Panamanians. He believed that was a major strategic blunder that we should have remained strong on. And what many people don't realize is that the ceding of the Panama Canal is actually highly controversial at its time. And a lot of people were outraged at it. It's something we don't remember now, but at the time, it was actually one of the hot button issues um, that caused a lot of frustration in the country. So, where does that get us now? What has Trump been saying about the canal?
Well, there is concerns about Communist Chinese Party influence in Panama. There is concerns about how the fees are being unfairly waged against U.S. vessels. And this is all what Trump's angle is from. So that's where Trump's angle is coming from, saying that these fees from Panama for doing like passing through are not neutral because they're more on American ships than Chinese-owned ships. Uh, and there's a bunch of different speculations from a bunch of different think tanks. One from the Hoover Institute starts talking about spy malware. I don't really know much about that.
Well, there is a concern where on both sides of the canal, there's major Hong Kong. Oh, so, okay, let me put it this way. So, throughout the canal, on both sides of the canal, there are ports where you can dock the ships, reload the ships, move around the ships. And on both sides, a major Hong Kong conglomerate owns certain areas of the ports. And these areas are acres on acres. They're very, very large swaths of land that are owned by these Hong Kong firms. And it's unclear what exactly is going on the property of these Hong Kong firms. But there are some reports, unsure the validity, make that very clear, unsure the validity, that there could be questionable behavior, questionable activity going on in the properties that are currently owned by these Hong Kong companies along the lines of, how do I put this? Drone usage to spy basically on the canal, technological spyware basically being implanted in certain areas along the canal, basically posturing that we don't really know the effects or the possible ramifications of, but in a serious political issue could prove to be something.
Yeah,
It's a concern.
and it's interesting. I mean, I've learned about somewhat like a few years ago about spyware and cranes and like some technological capabilities and cranes and what they can do with that. And so I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, we have seen spying operations here in America from China. So I wouldn't be shocked if they try to do that in South America and try to use that as a way to check what's going through there and have their own logistics numbers and see that.
Yeah, and it's clear that I think Trump's bombastic behavior has dissuaded the Panamanians somewhat from getting closer with China. For example, the Panamanian government basically turned away from a deal with that same Hong Kong company to basically expand its holdings and create more closer trade relations and deals with. An additional thing, I know you brought this up a few times, is that let's say even if we were to seize the Panama Canal, this wouldn't be our first time doing it. Let's talk about Operation Just Cause with George W. Bush.
Yeah, it's really interesting because we've sent troops down there before with Operation Just Cause, Bush, and so I don't know. I don't think I don't think we'll also send troops down again at all. I think this is going to be one of those talking points that leads us into, they do something that we want them to do, and then we back off. Like another example of this very big expansion is American land or red, white, and blue Greenland.
Yes. All right. Greenland. So Greenland is a case everyone talks about, everyone jokes about. I don't think a lot of people actually understand the Greenland question at all.
Well, yeah, I personally, I actually was joking about this yesterday because, I mean, for me, I didn't really know that we had a history of trying to buy Greenland.
Numerous
I know we
times.
used it in 1941 to 1943 for the European campaign in World War II.
It was an extremely important naval base to have access
Yeah.
to at that time.
I did not know it goes back to 1867.
Oh, yeah. Well, basically, when we were full on manifest destiny post Civil War. We we bought with Seward the Alaska, which is a fascinating story of actually how that deal was created, how we ended up buying Alaska from the Russians, and we looked elsewhere. Seward also looked to buy. Was it Seward? I think
Yeah, it
Seward
was
also
Seward. Seward, by the way, just to clarify, was Secretary of State under
under Lincoln and Johnson.
Johnson. So yeah, Secretary of State, and then he started eyeing, uh,
Greenland.
yeah, Greenland.
And there was even times where certain areas of Canada, I think Prince Edward Isles, was a potential purchase from the U.S. And there was actually a short period of time where there was actually good consensus on the island of Prince Edward. I believe it's one of the islands off of Canada to actually join the U.S. So there's actually a lot more land, horrible, terrible territory that has a history of U.S. Attempted acquisitions. So what is the value of Greenland? Why do we talk about Greenland? Well, there's a few reasons. The reason I tend to hear about is the U.S. defense view of it, kind of the America First view of it, which is that Greenland is a very important strategic port to have in order to have access to Europe. It is the closest to Europe North American port, not including Iceland, which Iceland is Europe, but it is the closest port that we have to get to Europe if necessary. And basically, we need that port to be defended, and if necessary, we need to own it if it's not being defended adequately. There's another view, the tech bro view, which is, I didn't hear about this until actually more recently, actually. Greenland has a lot of rare earth metals
Yeah.
that are very, very good and very, very important for a lot of technology that we're trying to process. And because of that, we should have access. We should try to get access to those resources.
And that makes sense. I mean, as a lot of one of my criticisms, I love the Chips Act, but one of my criticisms of it was that we didn't really fix our resource problem. And so it makes sense because a lot of these rare earth materials are needed for batteries, are needed for microchips, and are needed for a lot of these technologies that we need. And so Greenland can have that, and Greenland has that. And one of the other things that while researching this was, and National Geographic puts it very generously, as the Arctic Arctic warms, unlocking new shipping routes and access to untapped resources. So one of the other things that was interesting was people were talking about how it can unlock new shipping routes for America and for our companies that go to Europe and all that, instead of using or the Arctic path
Yeah.
or the
And
yeah, not the Arctic, but yeah.
no, yeah, basically it's Greenland could be even more important, being that than basically northern sea routes are becoming more accessible, opening up, more usable throughout the year. And that kind of plays into two things. So first, let's go back for a second and look at it in the sense of not the trade resources, but in terms of security. What has Trump's claims actually done? Well, most Greenlanders don't want to be bought by the U.S. They're pretty happy with their current situation. They're also a nation that survives off subsidies. The Danish government subsidizes a lot of the industry and just general survivability of the island, without which that area, that territory loses. I don't know if it's in the millions or billions every year. However, Trump's claims have done a few things, actual things that have happened as a result. Firstly, Denmark changed the Danish royal family changed its official crest to include more explicit imagery of Greenland's Greenland's symbolism, basically draw closer ties. The Danish government also pledged a 22.5 billion krone security investment into Greenland, which is about 1.5 billion USD, into the defense of Greenland, including the port areas which house occasional U.S. ships. So, if you look at it from the perspective of America First security concerns, these claims actually did what Trump was trying to do, which was actually make the region more secure for our naval harbor, for American shipping, for American security concerns. So, in a sense, if you look at it that way, America won. Now, if you look at it from the foreign resources for rare earth metals. That question's still up in the air exactly what can happen. Now, what I think is more likely to happen is that you can create a trade deal with Greenland. Greenland has enough autonomy where they're allowed to make their own trade deals separate of what Denmark has to say. And this could be a lucrative opportunity for the island. Like I said, they're an island that is net negative. This opportunity to open up whole new mining opportunities, especially with permafrost being rolled back in the region because of global warming. Who's to say? There's a lot. It's a big industry. It's a big industry. It's a big industry that we can teach the Greenlanders how to do, and we could have a lot of good Americans going up there to teach them how to do it.
Drill, baby, drill.
Drill, baby, drill.
But yeah, no, I don't see America actually buying it, but I do see it that a trade deal probably happens. We get more land there, or we get more. It's like something. I feel like something. It's easy to say something will happen. I do think that there might be another base, maybe a new port that we get to own or lease from them. Like more access to Greenland will definitely happen in the next 4 years.
Look, I'll definitely say I'm a big fan of the concept of American expansion. And if you really want to have that 50-year plan of getting Greenland into the fold, you got to get them more economically coupled with us, build closer relations. What builds closer relations? Having a bunch of Americans go there, help out, build an industry with the Greenlanders, make them a net profitable island. I think that's a great, great opportunity. I want to take also a side note to talk about this because this is a general trend that I'm having with this new Trump 2 presidency. Basically, I think it's very hard to basically judge anything that the administration does the day that it happens. Because most of the time, it doesn't happen the way that he basically claims that it will or what he wants. This is a tactic that he does. You have to give everything about like 2 weeks to marinate to really figure out what really became of it. The Greenland claims, what really became of it. The Panama claims, what are really becoming of it. The Colombia 25% tariffs, what really became of that? Well, for some context on it, Trump said we're going to deport some illegals to Colombia. I think they're Colombian illegals. You're taking them back. The president of Colombia said, no, we're not doing that. Trump said 25% tariffs. Then the president of Colombia said, right this way, Mr. Trump. Please land your planes.
Yeah.
You can't make any judgments because you're like, oh my God, 25% tariffs, and then it doesn't happen.
Well, yeah,
nothing. Like, it's a roller coaster. This administration.
Yeah, and I do want to say it is a roller coaster. I mean, like you'll hear like I remember I sent you the headlines. It was like I think it was within 30 minutes of a headline. So it was like one headline was like Colombia blah 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 won't accept
Colombia says no,
and then like 30 minutes later.
Trump says 25% tariffs. Then 30 minutes later, President of Colombia says okay.
Yeah, it was like all in this one news feed of like I even like checked the articles. I was like, whatever, but it was funny to me. But yeah, and like going with that, I mean, you see how bombastically Trump wants to deport people and like from America, and now he wants to deport people from Gaza, which I don't know. I think deporting people from their from other countries might be a little expansionist and a little too far.
Well, it's not even expansionist because America won't even claim it as our own. We're just, helping out another country with their development, put it that way. Again, I think this is one of those issues where it's like, what is happening? But you have to give it weeks, plural, to really get what actually is coming out of this. I think this might be an example of, Trump saying a lot, planning a lot, and then what actually comes out of it is a very different result than what you think is going to happen. That being said, I think we should talk about where it is as of now. Again, though, if you think too hard about it, your mind's going to explode with any of these claims. You just have to let it sit. You just have to see what happens. Don't make your judgment too quickly. Let it play out a bit. Then make a more informed decision.
Life has been a lot easier when you just sit back and then let everything happen, and then you form your opinion about it after.
Right, and then you buy stocks where it should be appropriate.
True. So yeah, now Trump has come out with a plan in Gaza.
Well,
for Gaza,
a Trump plan made by actually a GW economics professor, Joseph Pelsman. And we'll get close to home.
Yeah, we'll get into that. So, with that, he talks about deporting 2 million Palestinians and moving them to Egypt and Jordan, and trying to get them to take the the Palestinian or refugees or whatever, and getting them to take them, and then they're going to change it up and make a whole new, whole new system. And when I first saw this, there was still like speculation or there's still like things being like, oh, he'll let them come back. Like, okay, like I wouldn't mind putting money into Gaza and remaking their whole country and like making it like a place where like there's
Well,
economic opportunity.
I think first let's talk about what's the rationale behind it.
Well, yeah, and that's
Right.
I'm gonna get to that. I mean, and it's like for me, I was like, okay, I did debate high school, and when you see poverty increases in countries that don't have terrorism, crime increases. Places with uh what's it called? Places with terrorism or extremist groups or even just freedom fighters. And when poverty increases, typically terrorism also increases because a lot of the times these organizations hold power. They can have a lot of resources and gives opportunities to those people. So I was like, oh, this will be great to invest, give people a place to actually have a like stable life and like make the region less unstable. And then uh then Trump says, well, no, they won't be able to return. And I was like, oh,
It's literally settler colonialism.
yeah. So I was like, okay. So yeah, I do think this is something that watching it develop was interesting. You had Trump being like, no, they won't be able to return. Marco Rubio being like, no, they will. And then Trump double it down, being like, they ain't coming back. And I'm like, wow, that's actually insane to me.
Yeah, so it's a massive question basically. And like I said, regardless of your views on this, just just give it a little time. Just give it a little time because whether or not you share my views, which I'm not going to talk about on this podcast, uh, you just have to let it cook because we can't stop it. Unfortunately, it's going to happen the way it does. Now, this does play into a little known thing called the Ben Gurion Canal Project,
Oh
which
yes.
a lot of people don't know about, but it's a thing. And the Ben Gurion Canal Project is basically this plan by Israel to create a rival canal to the Suez. It would basically go from the Red Sea, because the way the Suez goes, it kind of goes like this. I don't know. I mean, if you're watching it, you can see me go like this. But if you also look at the way the seas work, the Red Sea kind of jets off to the right a bit, and you can connect through a canal into the Mediterranean through that. I hope my geography is doing well. I think it's the Mediterranean.
Yeah.
And basically, part of that plan, the Ben Gurion Canal, in order to get it done, it goes basically vertical and a little horizontal through Israel. It goes right through Gaza, like right down the middle of Gaza. And so I'm curious because I haven't seen like the blueprint plans or anything like that, but I'm curious if these plans that are created include the concept of a canal running right through it, because that kind of solidifies that they will be going forward with the planned construction of the canal. And the appeal of this canal would be a rival canal to the Suez. It makes more competitive rates, and that you can get Israel billions of dollars of revenue through it. So it's a great question, this Ben Gurion Canal, whether or not it will be done, whether or not it's been accounted for and planned in this new Riviera of the Middle East. And I just want to know if there are going to be MGM casinos and like
Yeah.
a big high ball money roll in there.
Yeah, and also with that Trump's plan and all that kicking off today, actually it came out at 2:13 a.m. that Marco Rubio is going to be out there doing a Middle East tour, talking to countries like Israel, visiting United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia, and just kind of trying to figure out some stuff and working on those either peace deals or working on I don't know what to call it, the Gaza plan. Yeah,
The Pelsman plan.
the Pelsman plan. Yes, actually. So yeah, this is interesting that Trump's plan for Gaza was actually made by a GW professor, economics professor Joseph Pelsman. Yeah, and
It's brought a lot of domestic when I say domestic, like in the school, there's been a lot of controversy over this, actually.
Yeah.
I remember I was on Instagram the other day and I saw a post basically calling out the plan and excoriating Pelsman for his contributions to it.
Yeah. And also it was and then, I mean, like for the and I'm not going to justify the plan, but the arguments for the plan is based in the idea of this country is already too destroyed. We need to fix it by investing in it,
Basically
by
starting from scratch.
starting over. And that is I think that is some of the words. Yeah. That's what he says.
Oh yeah, starting from scratch.
You have to destroy the whole place. You have to restart from scratch.
Well, I mean, if you look at the videos of the rubble and the remains of Gaza, like in the aftermath of the war, it literally looks like Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Just instead of things getting eviscerated, it's just all on the ground. It's a messier Nagasaki and Hiroshima. It's like kind of disturbing the degree of destruction, but that is war.
Yeah.
That is what happens,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
And so, like, I don't know. I think there's like you keep saying, because there's so little knowing what will actually happen that's hard to talk about kind of where this was going. I think the plan off the top of when it was developing the news um was a very intriguing idea. Once Trump doubled down on it though and said none of them are coming back, I think that turned a lot of people away from the plan unless they're very um Israel supporting, like very far right supporting Israel, in the sense of that plan. I think that's where you get the support, but I do think this is gonna become a really unpopular belief.
Yeah, it's especially going to be interesting exactly what is the degree that the U.S. Participates in the like. Let's say this plan does get carried out, and let's say Trump is right. Where again, this is big ifs. You have to give this time to cook. You can't take anything at face value with this administration, for good or for bad. It has its pros, it has its cons. That being said, let's say the plan does get carried out. The Palestinians aren't coming back. Um, Gaza becomes some sort of like second Tel Aviv or something, maybe like a Macau of the Middle East. There's going to be a lot of discussion over what exactly is the role of the U.S. in this. What should be the role in the U.S. of this? It's a big one.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's bring it back to a more domestic sphere of things. DOGE and Elon Musk, our great benevolent cost cutter.
The greatest cost cutter, the greatest saver.
Let's talk about it.
So Doge. So Doge has gotten access to the Treasury Department files on through OPM's office personal management.
Personnel management, right?
Personnel management, yes. And they have access. I know that there was one staffer that got writing access for less than 12 hours and was revoked because they didn't even access it.
Well, when you said writing it, what does that mean?
So they could change documents, change numbers, and cut things if they actually wanted to.
Social Security deleted.
You do not exist. And so they had that access for less than 12 hours. And then, but there's been a lawsuit launching saying that the talking about
is a violation of privacy, basically.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different types of lawsuits, but one of them that I was talking about was a lawsuit saying that this email server that the Elon Musk team brought in was a danger and was something that we should not allow. And then there's been back and forth about, is the server real or is the server not real? As OPM said in a post on X on Wednesday, that the reports about a private server being brought into OPM are false. To make you really feel dystopian, also the lawsuit that is suing about this thing is using. There's an anonymous complaint. I do think that's like, I don't know if it's valid or not, and we'll see. But then there's also a complaint citing a Reddit post detailing
it's the new QAnon, but for the anti-cutters.
Yeah. So I don't know, but it is interesting. I mean, people. My take on it personally is I do understand why he has access to it and why he has access to the Treasury, because when you are tasked with cutting spending, you kind of have to be able to see where the spending is going, and where it's like there's things like grants. Where's that money actually, like, not in a bad way, but where's that money actually going? Because you can see $1 million is allocated for grants. Who won those grants? What projects are they awarding them to? And so I think when you're Trump and when you're trying to find ways to cut spending, you have to have someone have access.
Yeah. Personally, I'm not very enthusiastic over the fact that he has access to all this information. Uh, Personally, I don't think he should. Now, if you created a commission that was, tax cutting, that was cutting, not tax cutting, but cutting these expenditures that wasn't Elon Musk per se, I just don't, I simply just don't trust him. I don't trust him or his committee to basically do this. The department, which actually isn't a department, to my understanding, it's a non-governmental blue ribbon commission, something like that, which means everything it does is a recommendation. Although a recommendation with large sway in this administration. I I just simply don't trust him having access to this information. Not even necessarily him, but the people working for him. I don't think they've been properly vetted the way that a government employee does. I think there's potential conflicts of interest there.
Going into that, what do you see is the danger?
What do I see? Well, this information is accessible to a group of individuals who I don't think have been properly vetted.
And like, what would be proper vetting them? Like, kind of
Well,
explain to me your thinking and the
yeah.
dangers
So
with it.
so a government official generally has background checks. They go up the ladder to be eventually achieve this like available ability to see this information. When you're on the Department of Government Efficiency, you just have to be brought on by Elon Musk and the other people who hire them. Then you have access to information now that you're on the committee.
You don't think they do any background checks?
They're not entitled to. They don't have to.
Okay, I would, on the reason of assuming, I
Well,
would probably
no, you could say that they do background checks, but I don't think they're doing it for the same motivations and the same reasoning that they do within the government.
okay, sure. And then where do you kind of see like that danger?
Where-
Like, because I'm trying to figure out for me, like, I guess, like, where are you finding this danger and what is danger?
I think it's a risk, and I can't cite you what has already been leaked because that hasn't happened yet. Well, we don't know, but I think it's a risk that wasn't necessary that could have been handled differently.
I think my question is talking about like the danger. Is it like, what is it in the sense of like what could possibly happen?
I
Like,
think
is there a fire gonna start or is there a bomb gonna go off? Like, what is the danger of having these individuals looking?
no, it's not looking into the government. It's the mishandling of the information and possibly having it leak.
Okay.
I don't care them looking into the government. I think looking into the government is great, personally.
Yeah.
My fear is that these people are not adequately background checked, adequately of good character in that sense, in that regard, to not either accidentally or perhaps for malicious intent mishandle such information.
Yeah.
And I can't say that it will happen, but I think it's a risk that I personally am not comfortable with.
So you think a leak could happen?
I think a leak could happen or like selling of certain information, not necessarily by the whole committee, but just by one or two individuals who are out there.
I see. Looking into that, people keep saying that they have no like legal burden if they did that.
I think they do,
Yeah.
just by like the
So,
factor
like,
of it.
like
But
there is a very big legal danger.
yes, but people doing that tend to try to do it thinking that they're not going to get caught.
I know, I get that, but I think for a lot of these people, like, if you see spending or a credit card going out of your like thing, them selling data or selling social security numbers is like a very big felony.
Oh, I agree.
Like, so it's like, to me, I do think that the oversight that they have is that the loss, like the legal system,
hmm
and if they're caught doing something bad, they will be punished.
hmm
Like, there's a bunch of social security acts that protect privacy like that. Um, Now, my only thing about this that I do feel somewhat hesitant about is like, I it's is the recommendations that Elon Musk will come with for the cuts. Some people, I don't know if this is what's going to happen. But some people argue these cuts are going to be a back or a laying down a foundation for being like, well, now we can do tax cuts if you agree with those or disagree with those, whatever. So my worry is that it might not even actually lead to a saving. It might just lead to new plans, like typically what most budget cost saving programs happen. We
This
save
gets
a bunch.
shifted around.
Yeah, we saved a bunch of money and now we should spend it on that.
We got to spend it on meteor drilling, and we're going to give all that money to SpaceX because they're the only company that can do it, guys.
They are the only company. Remember, Trump's always been talking about the rockets from Elon Musk and how they land, how is the arms grab it like a little baby.
Jeff Bezos is just sitting there with his like blue sky, just like absolutely furious right now.
Yes.
All right. Moving on, we should also talk about the department cuts. Some of them include the NLRB, National Labor Relations Board, the USAID, which is a big one, the U.S. Agency for International Development, the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, DOE Education, Department of Education, DOE Energy, Department of Energy.
Those.
Oh my God. Okay.
Add that E.
Okay.
The E's not silent.
Tell me a little about it, Trex.
So, I mean, what we're seeing, first off, is a lot of cuts trying to reduce of government from Elon Musk's commission of DOGE. One of them was sending out a thing saying that we will pay you 6 months if you
Severance, basically.
severance to leave your job.
And this was an offer initiated by Musk allies at the Office of Personnel Management. It was accepted by about 77,000 workers, or about 3% of the entire civilian government workforce. And the office encouraged federal employees to leave their jobs with the promise of continued payments until September.
Yeah, and then we've seen with USAID a lot of freezing of the aid, and also government employee cuts. For example, 7,000 employees were placed on leave or fired, and this has caused a lot of like controversy, confusion for a lot of people. And last night I didn't really check into this, but like I was hearing that they have a lot of people over like in Europe, and they can't get them severance because it would be really expensive because of how like the worker rights are there and how good the employment benefits are. So they're just kind of leaving them on furlough.
Furlough, yeah.
And it's like,
We'll get to you later.
yeah, we'll get to it later. So that's one of the things. We've also seen terminating federal leases for office spaces.
Oh, yeah. And it's actually so funny. So, yeah, we're terminating a lot of leases for office spaces, but in the ones that we're keeping, we're making the workers actually come back in person to work, which was a funny thing, side thing. This is a bit of a tangential thing, but not really. I was getting a haircut the other day in this place in DC, and I was talking to the guy cutting my hair, and I was talking to him about actually Trump making a lot of the civil service workers come back into the offices. And I was talking to him, and I was like, yeah, like before COVID, when a lot of the guys had to come into office like in person, like did you notice the difference in DC? And he was like, oh yeah, definitely. The streets were a lot busier. There was just a lot more people. I had a lot more business. And I told him like, how's business been since then? He's like, oh, it's been a lot worse. It's been a lot harder because there's a lot less people in the city. A lot more of my clientele just never came back. And he told me that he's very excited that basically a lot of these workers are coming back into the area. It's going to reinvigorate a lot of local businesses, a lot of local industry. And this is something that the DC local government, Mary and Bowser, have all been actually very excited about, bringing these government workers back into the offices, buying more in DC while you're here. You buy a sandwich, you go get your haircut, you get your stuff dry clean. It's going to bring, it's going to be a nice economic boost for the city of DC having all these workers back.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I think like that is probably a good thing for the local community.
Trump cares.
Trump cares about DC, But one of my favorite things personally that DOGE has done is eliminate the penny.
Start saving your pennies, because in a couple of years that might become a keepsake.
No, it's funny. Throughout high school, I used to debate, and I would always send in this bill for the debate format called Congress. It'd be eliminate the penny.
It costs 2 cents to make. It makes no sense.
Yeah, that's the exact argument, And so, I mean, it's like we said, he is doing a lot of cuts everywhere. Elon Musk recommending um they're getting also access to the Department of Education's data and figuring out where money's going from there. And they're trying to just keep kind of expanding their access and find stuff that's um I guess to cut or just find more information.
Well, one big thing they cut was the were the DEI programs. Because,
Yeah.
racism is over, guys.
Well,
DEI is no more.
as the NFL would put it, yeah, it's no more.
Yeah, we don't need to end racism anymore because we did it. It was actually solved when the Golden Age of America started.
Yeah.
So,
But then they canceled the Doge on X probably. It announced on January 29th that it has canceled $45 million in DEI scholarships. And it's well, I guess they let it like one of the scholarships was allowing Burmese students to study at universities across Asia.
across Asia.
Yeah. Um,
So this was money going to Burmese students to study in Asia.
that's what Times is saying. That's what the Times is saying. Now
I'm sure that was coming back to help Americans, right?
yeah, through the H-1B.
Oh yeah, they get hired by the H-1B visas.
It's all about the circle, okay?
For a job that American could not have done.
No, stop. And so this is I mean, it's just we'll see these cuts, but like I said, like as somebody that would like to see waste cut and like try to make the government not pay down its debts, but reduce our deficit spending just a little bit. We're gonna see. I mean, like Doge says they're gonna try to do $2 trillion worth of cuts. I mean, hey man,
Not happening.
I don't know. I know 45 million might seem like a lot, and 173 million from cutting penny cost, and but it's nothing. I think they're not gonna. They're obviously to me, it's not gonna do that goal in 4 years, unless they do some drastic things. But I mean, we'll have to see where Elon Musk takes this. If the information is abused, we'll have to see if more programs keep getting cut, and kind of where U.S. aid will go from here. Because I know it's caused a lot of trouble and has caused a lot of what's it called? Kind of confusion, like how he did the executive orders. As I was listening to this Ezra Klein podcast with a constitutional lawyer, was instead of that, and this was the lawyer's critique. He's like, I do, if I remember correctly, he's like, don't mind trying to cut some spending. The problem, how he went about it was he sent it out, this memo, and everyone's like, I don't know what I'm doing. Are we freezing Social Security? Are we freezing all these things? Instead of having a meeting with all these department heads being like, hey, we're not actually going to freeze this. We're going to freeze this only. And so I'm hoping I'm hoping for America, Trump does more stable actions of cutting stuff. That instead of kind of doing these mass freeze things, like everyone stop doing what you're doing, and kind of doubles down on his cuts, but at the same time doesn't do it recklessly.
Yeah, it's definitely gonna be interesting. The courts have got their work cut out for them. Definitely, they got a lot. They're gonna be doing a lot this administration. So I think with that, I think we covered everything we wanted to talk about today. Trex, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening. This episode was brought to you by our producer, Miles Moorfield. This episode was also brought to you by the Ox Institute. For more information to keep up with them, follow them at oxinstitute.org. Thank you.